Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Inside the Huddle. We are looking ahead to week 8 in the NFL already. I'm your host, Neil Reynolds, joined as ever on Thursdays by Phoebe Schechter. And Phoebe, we're starting to, but we're not quite there yet. We have an idea of what some of these teams are now, for good and for bad reasons.
Yeah, it's getting much clearer, and it also is making these matchups so much more fun and exciting to watch. I mean, even thinking about this weekend, we have the Bears and Commanders. It's just like the gift that keeps giving, the treats that we all want all the time.
It certainly does. We're going to go through some news. We'll go through things we noticed this week, things that are on our radar, and we'll look ahead to some games week 8 in the NFL. So, should just be noted, we are on air at 4 o'clock on Sunday because of the clock changes in the UK, but not yet in America. So, 4 o'clock on air. First games kick off at 5 o'clock. Second round of games kick off at 8:25. We sort of get an early night, but well, I guess we don't really. Our clocks wouldn't have adjusted that much.
No, and we'll still be wide awake, watch the second game. I mean, I kind of like that, to be honest. I mean, I feel like I'm just pumped with caffeine anyway, so, just buzzing all the way.
Yeah, you never walk out of those studios looking tired.
Oh, good. Well, there's a lot of, makeup.
Ah, no,
Keeps
not
me
at all, not
fresh.
at all. Let's talk about news. First of all, we are coming up to the trade deadline. So the trade deadline is November the 5th. There has been a trade this week. DeAndre Hopkins moves from the Tennessee Titans to the Kansas City Chiefs. So this is for a 2025 fifth round pick. Could become a fourth round pick if he plays 60% of the snaps in Kansas City. Tennessee are going to pick up $2.5 million of the bill. 32 years old, five-time Pro Bowler. Phoebe, can he still cut it?
Yes, he can still cut it. I mean, we saw him when he was in Arizona, what he was able to do, and then the Titans, he's shown that, but he doesn't have that quarterback that is quite honestly a Patrick Mahomes. And
Mm.
now you put him in this roster, and I feel like sometimes the Chiefs they just understand, right? In terms of yes, they've got all these injured players, but imagine when you have a full healthy roster of DeAndre Hopkins, of Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown. I mean, they are so stacked with talent that all of a sudden it's gonna just show up one day and you're like, oh my goodness, who are these Chiefs team? They're gonna dominate everything in the postseason.
And there's part of me that would have initially thought, okay, well, you might be trading for the name because he's 32, but he doesn't need to get 3 yards open because we know DeAndre Hopkins is about winning those contested catches, winning those balls. This is now someone that Patrick Mahomes can throw it up to. He doesn't need to be wide open because of the style of play and the kind of receiver he is.
Yeah, and that's really what this team has needed, right? It's needed some of that contested catch ability. I mean, they've had Travis Kelsey who kind of does that, but he's not been firing on all cylinders. So you bring in D Hop, who I mean, he has endless highlight reels of what he's able to do to crush the souls of teams that he's played against with one hand. I mean, he's phenomenal. And so you bring him in, and I just think he's going to be a game changer for him. And, for all those who love to hate the Chiefs, I mean, here's a perfect example, a guy that's just going to finally get you over that 3.6 average air yards per pass. I mean, I think that's going to go up quite a bit with him in
Yeah.
the building.
I think Mahomes was like, I'm fed up leading the NFL with interceptions. I need somebody to throw to. And here comes DeAndre Hopkins. And for Hopkins, Phoebe, at 32, you're messing about at this stage of his career with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. I mean, if you're going to make a move, this is ideal. You put yourself in a position to go and win a championship when you're at his age and all the stuff you've already achieved statistically.
Yeah, I mean, and we talk to so many NFL guys, right? The ultimate goal is to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And why would you not put yourself with a team who has probably the highest chance of winning a Super Bowl? They've been there, done that before. He's going to be able to improve himself, a challenge for him to learn a new system. I mean, there's so many great pieces that come together that if he looks at it from a selfish perspective, like this is a no-brainer. Ultimately, you could stay and kind of help a young quarterback in Tennessee, or you can get that elusive ring that everybody wants.
We talked about teams taking shape for good or for bad reasons. I mean, it's still October and it feels like Tennessee are playing out the slate. I mean, I don't know how they're going to get people to their games in December when it's cold and the weather's horrible because, you've gone from Will Levis to Mason Rudolph. You've traded away DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, this is the difficulty of being a bad team at this stage of the year. Your general manager is going to be inclined to have a bit of a fire sale and get rid of some people. And so then you definitely, the haves and have nots kind of, the gap even widens even more. The gap between Tennessee and Kansas City was wide anyway. It's just got wider.
Yeah. And it never really felt like there was a clear direction. You bring in a new head coach this year, you kind of try and change the program, but it never felt like anything really changed. You just kind of picked up from before. You're doing the same things. You kind of got the same guys in, but you're going to expect a different result. And I think ultimately, if you're going to make those big, if you're going to come in, you've got to change what's happening because what was there before is not great anymore. I mean, Mike Vrabel did a great job, but there were still issues with what he was doing ultimately, or they wouldn't have been in the position they were in. And so I don't know what their right next moves are because they're kind of stuck in a rut now. And are you just going to keep hoping that you do poorly, get a high draft pick? I mean, if you've got Will Levis, you've drafted him, at least let the guy play. I mean, how is it going to hurt you essentially any more than a Mason Rudolph?
Let's talk about things we've noticed. So these are things we've seen on social media across the internet. They are not news, but they are instructive, and we feel that they're worth mentioning and sharing with you at home and you listeners and viewers on YouTube. So Phoebe, what have you noticed this week?
So this week, and it's interesting because we have talked about it a little bit before in terms of the Cowboys brand, but there have been some multiple exactly interviews with ex-Cowboys players who are talking about how protecting the brand, protecting the star almost supersedes winning, which is a huge statement to come from the players. How they've even said it feels like they're in a zoo at times with the people going around on these tours. The guys will be working out in the gym and it's all glass windows. They're knocking on the windows, trying to get the guys. Could you imagine that being your work experience? Oh, it kind of makes me feel a bit icky, to be honest.
And didn't it say as well that they were in the hot tubs and people could see them in. So because I've seen tours go on, stadium tours where you'll see a little bit of the locker room, but it's roped off and you're just looking in. And the players are never anywhere near that stuff. These players said they felt like animals in the zoo.
And it sounds like that. I would feel like that. Imagine you're just trying to get your rehab and recovery done, and there's just a group of 30 people staring at you. I mean, you never get to feel at ease. And we talk so much about how you've got to be comfortable in this environment because you're there all the time. You've got to almost think it's like your home. There's no way I'm having 30 people up in my house, knocking my windows when I'm in my cold tub.
I wonder where you're going to go with that then. So
I had to.
You're not there. You haven't got a cold tub at home, surely.
I don't. There is. I'm actually at my best friend's house, and there is a cold plunge, one of those little blow up ones.
Okay, but you don't want 30 people watching you in it.
I don't think it's good for anybody. It's not good for me. It's not good for them.
What interested me? I almost said annoyed. Well, actually, it would annoy me if I was a player. What interested me was Jerry Jones was kind of talking about this, and he didn't say, "Oh yeah, we're sorry we've impacted on the play." So I don't think any of the players are bothered, and those who are swimming against the tide. In other words, with it.
Honestly, but that's where it really is about the brand. So, and it kind of makes sense ultimately because people are still always going to come to the Star, go to see the Dallas Cowboys facility because it's the only NFL team that you have access to like that. Right. So it is its own Jerry World brand. And it's a very weird experience. And for your owner to come forward and say that shows there's not much care for the players. And it's a silent kind of community.
Hey, he landed his helicopter on the practice field in the middle of practice a couple of weeks ago. I'm pretty sure he's not bothered about whatever work they're getting in. And then until it comes to Sundays and they don't win games. My one I saw, I love this, was the unselfish Saquon Barkley. So I know you saw this as well. We both like this. towards the end of the game against the New York Giants, his old team, Nick Sirianni approaches Saquon on the bench, tells him he's 13 yards short of his career high. He'd love him to get it, but he's going to take the starters out. And Saquon just said, I want to watch the young guys eat. Don't worry about me. I'm good. And Sirianni offered it to him again. And Saquon was like, no, I'm good. Get the young guys in there. And I thought it speaks to culture. We talked about culture a lot, this season already. And it tells you about the sort of person they brought into their building, not just the player.
Yeah, and that's a big part of it, right? Because there were some culture conversations last year about what it was really like in Philadelphia, and then you bring in a guy like Saquon who is embodying everything that they want to be, and you can see how him, Jalen Hurts, all those guys mesh so well because in order to get to the top, you have to be selfless. And I thought that was a very cool moment, and you could have set a record for yourself, and you're thinking, no, it's about everybody else. I really love that. And I love that Sirianni went over to him and offered it. He was considerate of what it might have meant for him.
Yeah, I think Sirianni did the right thing. I think he also got the answer he was looking for from Saquon. Kind of what he would have hoped for.
Exactly. I mean, the other thing is you think, okay, 13 yards. I mean, that might be 5, 6, 7 carries. Who even knows? I mean,
Yeah.
what if something happened? And that's always kind of playing in the back of your head, like, is it really worth it?
Based on his performance against the Giants on Sunday, it would have been 1 carry, but
I
yeah.
know. I was trying to not totally hate on the Giants.
I know, I hear you. This came across our radar very late, but there's a show called the Kirk Minihan Show. I've never heard of him. Sorry, Kirk. He reports that Jared Mayo is getting fired within the next 48 hours from the New England Patriots. They are 1-6. He has recently called his players soft. Bill Belichick, kind of in one of his 412 media appearances this week, pushed back on that and said there are tough players on that defense. One to watch, but I don't know. This has come out of nowhere for me.
Yeah, I'm surprised because there was this what I felt like was a clear idea around the season that they were going to build. You've got a new head coach in. They were able to take some kind of risks, move some people around, and I think that's super interesting. And I always find it interesting when you've got your ex head coach commenting on a program of a head coach who used to work underneath him. You almost think actually just stay out of this one. Just don't get involved in it because it creates an unnecessary conflict, not only with Coach Mayo and Coach Belichick, but also with like the media side of things and the whole organization, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, if this one comes to bear in the next couple of days, then I think it will be the comments. There'll be something that's been extra because Jared Mayo's talked about, this year, by the end of it, it's about what we know we've got going forward and what we know we haven't got and we can leave behind. So, that has to be a pattern that ownership are following as well. So if they break from that after 7 weeks, there's got to be something extra.
Yeah, and I understand that also, Belichick was there for so long and they weren't as successful in the last couple of years, but there was never a thought about letting him go in the middle of the season. I mean, it kind of flirted with the idea around the Germany game last year, but they were never going to do that. And I find it hard to think that Kraft would do that to Jared Mayo in his first year. Right. There's just so many lessons that come with that.
Yeah, I agree. We'll keep an eye on that one. Other things that are on our radar. So these are things we're looking at maybe this weekend, maybe in the coming week, maybe in the coming couple of weeks. We've hit on a few of these so far this year. I'm very proud of the Salah and Rodgers one, although that wasn't really that hard. I think we all kind of knew they weren't really best of friends. What's on your radar, Phoebe, as we head towards week 8?
Well, I'm not meaning to jinx it, but Josh Allen has not thrown an interception this season. This is incredible, especially for him when he was pretty much picked on multiple times last year about the amount of precisely. And so for him to be so careful with the football, now you bring in Amari Cooper. I mean, this literally could be an MVP Josh Allen year. If he continues like this, yes, he'll naturally throw something in the future, but this is MVP caliber, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's the only quarterback who's thrown enough passes. You have to throw a certain amount of passes to qualify for the passer rating rankings, all of that. He's the only qualifying quarterback not to throw an interception so far this season. To your point, if he does now throw one in the future, which will happen, it's 100% your fault.
I know. It's the commentator's curse, as you
Yeah,
call it.
because it's like, maybe he wouldn't have thrown one until you put it out there.
I know. I put it into the ether. It
We'll
was
never
just
know.
me, nobody else.
We'll never know. For me, mine is on my radar is Kyle Shanahan and how he coaches the 49ers out of this bad period they're in, because it is the injuries. Absolutely, it's the injuries. But I think, Phoebe, we agreed on Sunday night that there were injuries for Kansas City as well. And Kyle Shanahan just got out coached by Andy Reid. Apparently, there was a 5-minute lecture almost by his locker. Brock Purdy didn't say a word after the game. Kyle Shanahan, you've told us this before. Head coaches and coaches aren't normally back in the locker room with the players after the players game. And he was by Purdy's locker for 5 minutes and Purdy didn't say a word. I'm hoping that doesn't mean they're putting this all on Purdy, because, I think this is on the head coach to help out his quarterback now, because we've heard the word used a few times when it comes to Kyle Shanahan that he's a genius. So this is on my radar.
Yeah, and you're spot on for this, because we were watching the game and I think we all were on the same page, just saying, why are you not why are you not helping Purdy out? Why are you not adjusting? Go back to the motions and the mixing up of personnel. Yes, you don't have your star players on the field, but if you are an offensive genius, this is the big test of your career, right? What can you do with less, essentially? And
Right.
so I think naturally you're going to have those conversations with Brock Purdy, but as a coach, you've got to be able to step back from the situation. You have to watch film. You
Right.
have to watch film, and you can't be coming at your quarterback without watching film first. If you watch film and you're like, look, these are really poor decisions, or it was X, Y, and Z, fine, have that conversation. But you're not in a frame of mind yet to be able to be completely, educated and impartial in those situations, because it's still emotionally driven.
I 100% agree. I think first of all, you need to watch the film. All coaches always say that. We've got to watch the film. We've got to look at it back. Plays that might have looked like a quarterback's fault turn out to be a receiver's fault, because it's all just in your head. It's not on the film. Second, there's nothing that you're saying to Brock Purdy there in those 5 minutes that can't wait until you're either on the plane or everyone's cleared out of the locker room, or it's Monday morning. You know full well that locker room is full of media at that time. And there's a cooling off period for coaches and players. I just think, that should extend to, don't do that, because optics are very important on something like this. And we don't know what was said. He could have been giving him a pep talk, but they just lost a really bad game. I doubt he was saying, go get him, kid. That was great. So the timing of that was very, very weird to me.
Yeah, and you do have to protect your players. I mean, this is your star quarterback who you want to start. I mean, he's a phenomenal
Yeah.
quarterback. That's not to take anything away from him, but you've got to protect him a little bit as well, because there's always going to be the element of media around,
Yep.
and it's your job to, you always want to appear as a united front in public, and then behind closed doors, like you're saying, have those conversations, make those adjustments, and understand what he saw. But it wasn't a two-way conversation. It was one way where he's just speaking at him. It's almost like you're mad at a kid,
Right.
essentially, and you're telling them off. And that's not okay. You've got to read the body language in that space too.
Absolutely. So those are the things that are on our radar, things we noticed. Let's talk about week 8 in the NFL then. So like I said, we're on air at 4 p.m. First games kick off at 5. Our first game on Sky Sports. So it's the Philadelphia Eagles at the Cincinnati Bengals. So Phoebe, let's start with Philadelphia here, because Jalen Hurts hasn't turned it over for a couple of weeks. AJ Brown is back healthy, making big catches. Saquon's running for fun, and they've had 13 sacks in the last 2 weeks. This is a good time to be a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and it seems like Jalen Hurts is tidying some stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of issues we have around Jalen Hurts is always about his turnover to completion ratio, right? I mean, he does not protect the football. So to have him going out there and finally protecting the football, Saquon Barkley's just been a game changer for him because of what he allows the team to do. You just open up the passing game. Yes, AJ Brown is back. That is huge, but you open up the passing game by having a running game. And Saquon Barkley is playing the best football that we have ever seen him play. And I know so many people are saying it. The Giants must be kicking themselves right now, and they're watching not only play against him, but just watching how great this young man is out there, running through people and, his, again, contact and balance. But half the time it doesn't even look like he's getting touched anymore. He's just punches it and he's open space.
Yeah, I think he's like the perfect modern day running back, and in terms of he can do the stuff between the tackles, but you want your running back to create you some explosives, and that's what Saquon does. And look, maybe he wouldn't have been. He was actually no. Do you know what? I was going to say maybe he wouldn't have been this good in New York, but he was. There were times he was this explosive and he was this good, and they didn't want to give him a contract. He tried, they tried, and so you can see why he wanted out of town in the end, and why he's so happy to be where he is.
Yeah, and I think the biggest difference is there was nobody else at the Giants, right? It was Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, and you can't live like that. He
No,
can't carry the team if you've got no threat of the pass. Well, of course they're going to crowd the line and make him look redundant almost.
right.
And the fact that he was able to be explosive with all the offensive line issues and really no passing game is really quite impressive. So for the Eagles to see what he can bring to the team, and again, how Jalen Hurts is operating at the line of scrimmage, he's got a great feel in the pocket. It's just really nice to see them in a much more positive place than they have been. Because again, we look at the first couple of games, people thought Eagles are done.
Right.
Eagles are done.
Yeah. Cincinnati started 0-3, so we were definitely thinking the Bengals were done. They've won 3 of their last 4, and the one they lost very easily could have won, Phoebe, was the game against the Baltimore Ravens, an absolute classic. And Joe Burrow is really connecting now with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. So even though Philadelphia have a better record, this is a dangerous game, isn't it, as they go to Cincinnati?
Yeah, and I mean, just in general, Joe Burrow, we've talked about so much. He just takes a little while to get started.
Mm.
It's so many issues early on, whether it was Chase not playing with the contract, Higgins not playing, and now you finally get everybody rocking and rolling together, and they can completely attack from a passing game perspective. And it really forces your defensive backs to be on high alert, understand who you're going to double team or blanket. And Joe Burrow, he's just so much fun to watch. He is, you know, even the stats from last week don't necessarily reflect how good he was, because there were multiple drops throughout the game.
Right.
And you think he could have taken off with it, if you get some of those catches in there. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a really tough challenge against this team.
This is one we have to pick. We have to pick this game. So he says cunningly, who are you going to pick, Phoebe? Making you go first.
Oh, I know. I'm going to go with the Eagles. We didn't even talk necessarily about their defensive line, but I
Right.
just think they are going to be the biggest difference against Joe Burrow, who does still get sacked a few times.
Yeah.
Who are you choosing?
I'm going to go Eagles as well for that reason. I think I think Burrow can have his moments. I'm with you. I think the line takes over Jalen Carter and Josh Sweat, and I think that takes over and proves to be the difference. But I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be a good game. So that's the one we've got kicking off at 5 o'clock. We'll do our second game in a bit, but I want to talk about Arizona at Miami. So the Miami Dolphins have lost 3 out of 4 with Tua Tagovailoa on the sidelines. He's coming back this week. He's not going to wear the Guardian cap. He's not going to play any differently than he's always played. Phoebe, I'm going to be watching with my hands over my eyes nervously. Miami averaged 11.7 points per game without him. I'm finding all of this a bit confusing in that Tua said that he hasn't felt any concussion symptoms since the day after he got injured against Buffalo. And then all of a sudden he's on the practice field this week and he's going to play straight away. I'm just nervous for him as a person. He's not nervous for himself as a player. I'm nervous for him.
I think everybody's going to be doing that. And surely he knows all eyes are on him. I mean, people are looking to see Is he moving the right way? If he gets hit at all? Because you have to think even something like a whiplash or like a strong, hit where he doesn't necessarily go to the ground, does that affect him? Because any poor decision making off the back of a potential hit will be something that is excruciatingly looked at. And so that's got to add a lot of pressure on top of you. But I get there's an element where he has to put on his brave face. He obviously wants to play. He wants to represent Miami and the Dolphins and what they do, but it's not an easy decision for I think for anybody, but you have to support him as Mike McDaniel and the organization.
I think where I kind of get, it's just left me very confused this because it's obviously there was for him to say there was no symptoms afterwards. There must have been massive concern inside that building because we're 5 weeks on, 6 weeks on now from when that game was played. So if he didn't have any symptoms the day after, they must have been hugely cautious and said, well, we're giving this a good few weeks. We're testing every single test we can do, which is good. I'm glad about that. But there's part of me that's surprised he's coming back.
Yeah, and I think there's got to be an element where the organization has to be seen to be doing everything that they can to protect him and do the right thing. There's a very public concern around him as well. And maybe it's an element of take this time to really consider what it is that you want to do because you can be quite rash in your decisions if you're like, I just need to get back out there. And if the organization is saying, oh, yeah, you can play in a week or two, you might not even fully consider or speak to all the right people that you need to. But I just, and it's always a what if, and you don't want anything to happen to anybody, but that what if is a very real concern for him. That would be his fifth if anything were to happen to him. I don't know how many is too many.
I think we're going to see the power. Having said all of that, all of the concerns, we're going to see the power of the quarterback position. I think Miami's offense takes off immediately again. As lost as they've looked without him, I think it'll switch back on like that.
Yeah, and he is the quarterback for that scheme, right? His anticipation throws. That's why they've struggled so much, with Snoop Huntley in there. He's not the same guy. He doesn't throw with anticipation. He doesn't give his guys that chance. I mean, we look at what Tua was doing before he went out. He was one of the quickest to release the football in the NFL because that's just what the scheme calls for. So I think that opens up so much. And plus, the Dolphins defense hasn't been great, but their secondary have done a really great job. And you look at Arizona and they're going to try and keep everything in front, right? That bend, don't break defense. So it's going to mean you're going to have to put points up.
We'll see how that one goes. We certainly wish Tua the best as he returns to the field for the Miami Dolphins. Just quickly, Buffalo at Seattle. We talked a bit about Josh Allen. So this is a good game because Seattle came off a win on the road against Atlanta, snapping a 3-game losing streak last week. Just interested to get your thoughts on the impact of Amari Cooper, potentially how that might open things up for the rest of the passing attack there in Buffalo. Obviously, he got a touchdown on his debut.
Yeah, and I think it's such a great fit. I mean, you saw Amari Cooper at one point, he didn't know what route he was running, and Eddie still got the ball thrown to him. And I think he just fits so nicely into that scheme. Whether you're looking at your Keon Coleman's, you've got now Amari Cooper, you can kind of put anywhere essentially, and then your tight end game that they've got. Yeah. It's like it's all just beautifully coming together as a marriage. You think that's only one day of him. Imagine what it's going to look like with a whole other week of practice under his belt.
Yeah, absolutely. Buffalo are 5-2. They play at the Seahawks, who are 4-3. So our second game on Sunday is an 8:25 kickoff, and this is a good one. We hope it features Caleb Williams, first overall pick in the draft, against Jaden Daniels, who was taken second. We're recording on Thursday. Daniels missed practice on Wednesday with the rib injury that knocked him out of last week's game against the Carolina Panthers. We're going to have to pick this one, Phoebe, but it's a hard one to pick unless you know whether Daniels is in there, because both these quarterbacks are making a real difference for their teams.
Yeah, and they're both quarterbacks who are so exciting to watch. We would have loved to see them kind of battling each other. Fingers crossed it still happens, but Caleb Williams and the Bears come off a bye. They did a great job over in London. really peaking so far at what they've been able to do in terms of scheme. Cole Kmet having a big game, 2 touchdowns here in London, and then involving DeAndre Swift more. I mean, he's been so much fun, and so helpful for Caleb Williams. And then, I mean, you look at Jaden Daniels, and he's just like a pro in there. He's kind of our version of CJ Stroud last year in terms of that kind of almost veteran-like presence in his first
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
So yes,
I think
yeah. Do
that's.
you think?
I think you're right. No, I think you're right on Daniels. This the poise and the way he looks, not just how he plays. Um, he's led Washington to 31 points per game. That's the highest in the NFL. I mean, when was the last time we said Washington had the most prolific scoring offense in the NFL? I can't think of a time. So whether it's him, we hope it's him. That's nothing against Marcus Mariota, who will step in. But we want to see these young quarterbacks. And both, as you talked about the Bears and the support for Caleb Williams, which I think has been interesting and very vital. Washington had a really good running game featuring multiple players. And Terry McLaurin is now getting those opportunities to play with what looks like a high-end quarterback. And he's reminding us how special he is.
Yeah, Scary Terry is back.
Yeah.
And he is, because he's such a veteran player, I think he got forgotten for a little bit. And now he's kind of rejuvenated. I mean, every receiver wants to be the top dog in the building. And now he's built back up to that. He's got this great relationship. They're having these conversations on the sidelines. What do you see here? I mean, those are the things you want to see. And yes, whether it's Jaden Daniels or Marcus Mariota, Terry McLaurin is going to be that guy because of his experience, the way he sees the field, and he's just that security blanket for the quarterback. But he's been phenomenal to watch. Some of his catches this year have been incredible.
I'm going to pick this game based on both playing because that's what I want to see. I want to see both of them playing. And I'm actually still going to pick the Chicago Bears. I feel like they're in a really good run of form. Now, this is a much tougher test. They hadn't played the best of teams coming into London. Then they beat Jacksonville. But you say, I know it's an old cliche, but you can only beat who you play. And we see plenty of teams slip up week in and week out around the NFL. So they've taken care of business. I like what Chicago are building. So I'm going Chicago on the road. What about you?
And I like that you went first. You were very clear. You knew exactly who you wanted. We are on the same page, though. I think not just because of the Caleb Williams, the offensive side, the defense have been great as well, from Jalen Johnson to Jermaine Edmonds and Kevin Byard. I mean, I think they're kind of cooking at the moment. So I'm going to have to say Bears for this one, too. Although we do need to count up who is actually winning at some point.
We do. I tell you what, let's do that after. Let's get through Germany.
Okay.
Or we get one of our wonderful production team to do it because, well, I haven't got time, basically. And I'm not very good at maths. We do need to know. You're absolutely right, but there's no separating us yet. But let's see what happens with Sunday Night Football then. The Dallas Cowboys at the San Francisco 49ers. So we always build this one up whenever they play on Sunday night. Two of the most storied franchises in the NFL, loaded with stars. Well, they're both in a really bad moment. Dallas are 3-3, San Francisco are 3-4. This is is it a season? Oh, I'm going to ask you. Is it a season on the line kind of game here? I mean, I know it's early, but they both need to make a statement.
They both need to make a statement, and they both are decimated in terms of their teams. I mean, it's not even a fair example of who they are. Cowboys from a defensive line bit. You hope that they've healed up. They've had their bye week, but Cowboys have lost all 3 games at home and won all 3 games on the road. So you're hoping you've got those girl math working in your favor. But it's really hard right now because I couldn't actually tell you who is the better team. I think you've got elements of both which can peak, but then they both have so many downsides. Cowboys haven't changed. They still can't run the ball, and they still can't stop the run. And then the 49ers, they're struggling to run the ball with Jordan Mason, which was a complete surprise to see last weekend. And then alternatively, I don't know who they've gotten to throw the ball to anymore.
Well, I think that was an indication. When Brock Purdy was completing passes late last Sunday night, we're reaching for our depth charts every time to say, who the hell's this guy? Who was that? Who was that?
The irony is that I saw a thing basically saying Ricky Pearsall is almost the healthiest player they have on the offense right now, with everybody else having some form of injury.
50 days on from being shot in the chest, and he's the most in shape receiver on the roster. Wow.
Crazy, crazy.
With that in mind, who are you picking?
Oh, I am going to pick the 49ers because their defense, Fred Warner, will do whatever it takes to
Right.
get the stop.
Oh, I'm going to be really boring. So we won't need to tally up this week because I'm going exactly the same. So two reasons. I think Fred Warner,
Yeah.
that's the biggest one, and they'll find a way. And I think I still would trust the 49ers to get the running game going more than I'd trust Dallas to stop it. So I think those will be the differences. So I'm going to San Francisco as well. So
I like it. We were twins this week.
great minds, great minds.
Exactly.
All right. So we are going to wrap up this edition of Inside the Huddle. Any other business? No? Well done.
No, what I would say is last minute, but Robert Sala now going to join
Oh,
Green Bay.
I love this when coaches that get fired, there's no rule against them picking up another job somewhere. And him and Matt LaFleur was Salah LaFleur's best man? Was it, or was it the other way around?
Yeah,
Either
I
way,
think it was that way around.
they were in each other's wedding parties. And I think this is good. Robert Salah's a good man and he's a good coach. And what I find interesting is he's working with the offensive coaches, right?
Yes.
But to run a good defense, you got to know how to beat an offense. Yeah, we all think about Salah as a defensive mind. He was a tight end in college, so you got to kind of know both sides of the ball. I love it. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it too. I think about even in Buffalo, our offensive assistants, defensive assistants would go and speak to each other when putting together, game plans or ideas like, how do you see this? How do you see
Yeah,
this? So I think it's a really smart move by LaFleur there. And I'm interested to see how it benefits Green Bay going forward. This could be a really big kind of turn for them.
yeah. No, I'm pleased, and I'm glad to see Robert Salah back. He's a good man, getting back in football. So fired by the Jets, but he's back with the Green Bay Packers. So that's wrapped
Irony.
up. He's what? The
The
irony.
irony.
Yes, exactly. It's always good to be wanted somewhere.
Exactly.
Uh, so we are hoping you're going to enjoy the games on Sunday. So remember, join us at 4:00. We're on air. First games kick off at 5. Second games at 8:25, and then everyone gets to bed an hour early. Sort of.
So on.
So, thanks, Phoebe, and everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.